Alright guys, welcome back. We are at another ranking video. We just are, hot off the press with doing our Friday 13th ranking of all those movies. That was super fun and everything, and we're going right at it again with another ranking video. This time, of course, ranking every Alice in Chains album. We've been covering these for the better part of a month and a half, maybe 2 months now, and it's time to look into these things, Super hyped for it. It's been a really, really tough one. I say it every time, but it's true. This one, it's hard when there's a lot of albums because there's a lot more to rank, especially like in the middle ground, and it's hard when there's a little bit because there's only a few choices, especially if they're so damn good. And, I'll go ahead and disclaimer here, I love all these albums. Every single one of these, I love them all. And that's a rare thing in a band, to absolutely love every album in their discography. And they've got 8 albums, so that's a pretty, it's not like a giant, Iron Maiden, 16 album discography or anything like that, but it's a pretty solid, chunk of work there. And, there's more than likely more coming in the future. So, with that being said, we'll go ahead and kick off into it. As always, I do like to show off kind of some bonus stuff that I have, if I do have anything extra from whatever band we're talking about here. So yeah, I've got, I did do a review of this thing right here, the MTV Unplugged. I only had the DVD during that review, but I had my CD copy come in. But really, really awesome show. My favorite MTV Unplugged. And again, this was not part of the rankings, but people were wanting me to cover it, so I figured, hey, why not? And it's totally worth it. Just a very, very sad performance, but yet an incredible moment in their history. And just one of the best, I think one of their most memorable, documented live concerts out there. Then, of course, I have this right here as well, the Best of the Box, Nothing Safe. It has, this has got, some more unreleased, non-album tracks, and, this one was a new track for the album, Get Born Again, which is such a cool freaking song. It's got a demo version of We Die Young, some hits off here like Man in the Box, The Bones. It's got a live version of Rooster. Let me think here, an alternate version of, Got Me Wrong, they have that from the Unplugged. Then they have some more non-album tracks, like What the Hell Have I, off, the Last Action Hero soundtrack. I wish they would have included, on here, A Little Bitter. And, I guess this song wasn't out at the time, or maybe it was, Died, their final song they did with Lane. But I guess that's why they call it Nothing Safe Best of the Box, because this was kind of like a best of from, the Music Bank huge box set, which I would love to own someday. It's pretty expensive. Comes with a lot of cool stuff and a lot of cool, extra artwork and stuff from each of the albums. And, just a big box load of stuff. But this is a really cool thing to have, and definitely, you got Get Born Again and What the Hell Have I on here. So those are the big attractions from this, but definitely worth picking up if you ask me. Now, we are getting into the actual rankings. So there are 8 of these things here, and I did include, the 2 EPs, Jar of Flies and Sap, which that's where we kick off things with at rank number 8. We're going to talk about Sap here, which, I do love this thing. It's a really solid, kind of just cold feeling EP, acoustic EP, and their first, go at that sort of thing. And I think the 4 tracks, Brother, Got Me Wrong, Right Turn, Am I Inside, all just top tier, material right there, just top notch material. Then you get the joke song, whatever, Love Song, which that doesn't really, that's just kind of a bonus thing on there. Not really, I don't know if you'd really count it as a track or whatever, kind of just a funny little extra. But, when we're looking at this, compared to some of the albums that are much more filled and everything, this is, of course, going to kind of rank lower because it's got, 4 tracks compared to, and especially when you love all the material like I do, you want more, But, I mean, this is an EP, so that, and EPs, we've seen them before when I've covered them. They've ranked even when they have less, amount of songs than the full LPs, they have in the past ranked higher than quite a bit of full-length studio albums. That's why I do include these sometimes, and I think Sap is just an incredible EP, especially for, this was their second release, so this was a kind of an experimental move, from the band, as far as, dropping Facelift, and then right off the bat, right after that, going with an acoustic EP they just kind of snuck in there for people. So it was like, oh, they got kind of two sides to them. The kind of heavier side, and then their more softer acoustic side, which was, I just think very demonstrated just perfectly on this EP right here. It's just, for me, again, the lack of tracks on here kind of makes it drop down here, but the quality is just amazing. My favorites definitely are Brother and Got Me Wrong. Those first two that appear right off the bat there are just some of the best Alice in Chains material, I think, ever. In fact, I mean, hell, those two made it on the MTV Unplugged show that they did. So, yep, number 8, we're talking about Sap. Number 7, I just mentioned it being their first release, and this might be kind of controversial. I don't know. I've seen this one kind of thrown in a lot of different spots, but I'm going to go with Facelift. And this one is a really more upbeat and less sludgy kind of release than what they would, eventually delve into. And I think that, because, they were, before releasing this, Alice in Chains with the letter N, kind of like Guns N' Roses, and we're like a glammy kind of band. And there's still some of that lingering around in here with, tracks like Put You Down and some stuff like that. Lane's vocals are incredible on here. You have the huge hits, We Die Young, which is one of my least favorites theirs, actually. But I still do dig it. But Man in the Box is, arguably their biggest hit, and I do love that song. Sea of Sorrow is incredible. Bleed the Freak. I Can't Remember. It Ain't Like That. Sunshine. I really even love I Know Something About You. That's kind of a different song, kind of a unique one. But it is more upbeat, and they hadn't really found their defining sound yet, if you ask me. But I do think it's an incredible, incredible debut album, and it really just, shook the world of music. Kind of a whole kind of new sound. This was out before Nirvana's Nevermind, as far as big grunge albums, and so was Soundgarden's Bad Motorfinger. And I think those two albums really, while they didn't quite have the impact, massive, impact that made a massive reach, quite like Nirvana's Nevermind did, this did. Man in the Box, that single off here, the music video and everything, did shake things up in the music industry during that time. But overall, yeah, just an incredible debut album. I think they didn't quite have their established sound, nailed down just yet. There are some of my least favorite songs from the band on here. Put You Down being one of them. Let me think. Confusion's not one of my favorite ones they've ever done by any means, but it's still a good song. But then again, it has the really awesome tracks like I just mentioned a while ago that are some of my favorites they've done. So, but there you go. Number 8. Now number 7. Man, this little middle section right here got real tough, but I'm going to have to go with number 7. The Devil Put Dinosaurs here. And man, this one, I battled with this one in the next spot. In my mind, just like, damn it, kind of went back and forth. But this is just such a, sludgy album, man. I love it. This is kind of the William Duvall era as equivalent to Threelegged Dog, as far as, the darkness and, sludginess you get on there. I mean, we've got Hollow as the opener, Stone, which is one of Jerry's best riffs ever. Voices is a really pretty kind of acoustic bass piece. The title track, my God, what a spooky sounding track. Lab Monkey's one of my favorites. Low Ceiling has one of my favorite Jerry Cantrell solos. Breath on a Window, that breakdown near the end. You know what I'm talking about if you've heard that one. Just incredible. Another cool acoustic one with Scalpel. Phantom Limb, and it's just dark and twisted. Same with Hung on a Hook, and you close out with Choke. And then Pretty Done, which is the second track on here, is probably one of my least favorite tracks. I do really like the breakdown on that one, but this is an incredible album all the way through. this was quite a bit. This was their heaviest, I think, of the William Duvall era albums for sure. It's got just some heavy, heavy riffs again with Stone and Phantom Limb. I mean, come on, man. And Pretty Done, that riff is pretty badass. I mean, that's a killer riff for sure. I I just I think I kind of put it lower than the one I'll talk about, the next spot. Mainly, I don't, maybe just because of Pretty Done, it being my least favorite off here, while my least favorite off like the next pick, I still would put pretty high, like make that, I would call that really high quality Alice in Chains. And then not that Pretty Done isn't per se, but that one is one of my least favorite songs, probably in their career. But it's still a solid track. And I love the darkness and the heaviness this thing brings to the table. A massive, massive album. I mean, for the band as a second, that they proved that, hey, we're back with Black Gives Way to Blue, and they had to follow that up. And while I don't think it's better than Black Gives Way to Blue, I think they did a phenomenal job, saying, hey, look, we can still shake things up, make stuff different, because it definitely has its own sound. All these albums really have like their own kind of vibe they give off, which is always really cool with Alice in Chains. None of their albums really give off too close of the same, feel, while they do share some similarities and everything. But this is just an excellent album. Some of my favorites, I would say, are The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here, Hollow, Stone, Lab Monkey, Breath on a Window, and Phantom Limb. Those are definitely some of my favorites off here. Anyways, now we're looking at 876, number 5, the one that I just was really, really close to putting below Devil Put Dinosaurs Here. We're talking about their latest release, 2018's Rainier Fog. And man, I just, the hype for this thing I had back then was just beyond imaginable. I can't even tell you, and it's going to be the same way if they announce one, coming up probably again after this. It'll probably be after this this next tour they do, which, I've mentioned I've mentioned it a couple times to these reviews and everything, how I'm going to be going to see them in that tour, super hyped for it. But yeah, this album, it's quite a bit of a shorter record compared to Devil Put Dinosaurs Here. I think there's less songs, or I don't know about the song, like the number of songs, but the song lengths on Devil Put Dinosaurs Here were quite a bit longer overall, but you do get some kind of lengthier ones on here. We got the one, Amazing Opener. That was the first single that dropped, just that heavy monster of a riff. The title track, Rainier Fog, has got a really cool groove to it, awesome breakdown. Red Giant, man, that's one of my favorites by these guys ever. I love the acoustic Fly, kind of an interesting song. Drone is such a killer track, really, really dark, eerie, and heavy. Kind of brings that to the table again. I love the riff of Deaf Ears, Blind Eyes. Maybe's a really, really powerful song lyrically, and just really a beautiful song. So Far Under, man, it sounds like Lane's ghost is just living in that track as far as the vocals go. I mean, man, one of the heaviest riffs Jerry's ever whipped out. Never Fade has been one of my absolute favorites of this era. Such a uplifting and powerful, driving song. That's definitely one of my favorites off here. All I Am is probably my least favorite off here, but it is a really powerful ending to the album. Really kind of a sad ending to the album. But this album is just, it's freaking phenomenal. I've had a hard time ranking, again, these between these William Duvall era ones. It's been really, really tough. They're all just so great and just amazing quality. They've never disappointed me. Alice in Chains as a whole hasn't, let alone the William Duvall era. And this album, to me, is just, and also, I have kind of a personal connection to it, being, remembering I was like sophomore year of college when this thing was, kind of dropping, and that was just a really kind of a crazy time in life for me, and this thing was dropping, and it just kind of tagged right along with me. I was jamming to this thing just about everywhere I went. Fantastic album. My favorites, again, are just Red Giant, Deaf Ears, Blind Eyes, Maybe, So Far Under, Drone, Never Fade. Those right there are like the top of the pops there for you. Just incredible stuff. And I do think while it is shorter than the Devil Put Dinosaurs as a whole, I think the tracks, this is definitely more of a diverse album as far as things go. While not as heavy as Devil Put Dinosaurs here either, it does have its heavy moments, and Red Giant and So Far Under and all that. But the diversity of this album really kind of makes it, and kind of the pacing of it, the flow of it is beautiful. Love it, love it, love it. That's kind of what made me put it over Devil Put Dinosaurs here. But you know, that's flip flop before. That's changed it up before, you know. So, anyways, now to number 4. The first William Duvall era album, With Black Gives Way to Blue. I think this was, they just went all out with this thing. They had to show that, hey, we're back and we have still got it. New, you know, Sucks Lane's not here. Let's give him a awesome tribute by releasing an incredible record. And William, if you guys see my reviews for these things, you guys know I'm a huge fan of him. I think his solo stuff's awesome. You know, he toured with Jerry on his solo records, you know, for Boggy Depot and Degradation Trip and stuff. So he's been a friend of Jerry for a long time and the other guys in the band. So it's not like he's some random guy they plucked out of nowhere. All Secrets Known is such a drony, cool track. You know, Check My Brain that riff is just a monster of a riff. Last of My Kind is heavy as all get out. You got Your Decision, which is beautiful, beautiful stuff. A Looking in View, that is just a epic, really kind of proggy side, which we did see them develop, I think starting with like the Three-Legged Dog record, where there was more, obviously they're not a prog band, but I'm saying there was more, you know, time changes and lengthier tracks. You would start to see that kind of from Three-Legged Dog going up, and they kind of carried that over to this album. When the Sun Rose Again is one of my favorite acoustic pieces they've done. Acid Bubble, come on, man, that sounds like freaking, that's one of the sludgiest tracks they've ever done right there. Then we got, I mean, Private Hell, dark stuff, man, and that is another one that sounds like Lane is just there singing it with them, you know. And the beautiful, beautiful, sorrowful title track, Black Is Way to Blue, that's got Elton John playing piano on it, just a touching song. You know, I do dig the other ones a lot that I didn't mention here. Like Take Her Out, solid. Lesson Learned, that's another solid one. But those don't really quite ring my bell quite as much as a lot of that other stuff I just mentioned does. And this one, I think this is also a very diverse album as far as, you know, kind of having your, you know, upbeat kind of tracks, like Check My Brain. And, you know, Lesson Learned is kind of one, too, and Take Her Out is. And then you've got your sad ones, you know, acoustic pieces, when Black Is Way to Blue and all that. And then you've got your just sludgy ones and your classic Alice stuff, like Last of My Kind. So this one, I mean, hell, Rainier Fog has ranked above this for me before. But, you know, this one to me, because they both do have the diversity going for them. They have a lot of variety in tracks and the kind of styles that Alice is showing you, you know. So that's what made them go, those two William ones go above the Devil Put Dinosaurs here. And then it came down to Rainier Fog and this one being on this spot, and I just think the songwriting was stronger, and it's just a really powerful, emotional album, it being the first one back for the band after Lane's passing all those years later. But anyways, now we're in the top 4. Which, man, this is where tough stuff gets really tough here. And I said top 4. I meant top 3 here. We're at number 3. And I'm going to go with Dirt. Might be controversial because I'm sure this is sitting pretty at most people's number 1. And it has been my number 1 before. You know, this is where the band really took off. I mean, Them Bones just comes jumping at you, you know, right off the bat with that track. Damn That River. Rain When I Die is one of my favorite Alice in Chains songs ever. Down in a Hole is freaking beautiful. Rooster, probably one of my least favorites off here. But it is, and that's one of their biggest hits. I do like it and everything, but not one of my favorites off here. And Junkhead, one of my favorites. Just incredible vocal work. Dirt is just dark song right there, man. Hate to Feel, love the riff in that one and the sludginess of that one. Angry Chair is one of my favorites ever. And then they close it out with Wood. You know, Godsmack and Sick Man aren't quite, I mean, those are really good songs, but those aren't, both Sick Man, Godsmack, and Rooster aren't really my favorites off there by any means, but they are really, really good. I think, though, that, you know, Lane's voice was at, I mean, it was still really, really strong during this time here, so you can hear the power in tracks like Rain When I Die, and Wood, you know, the tribute to Andy Wood track that just was featured on the single soundtrack and made the cut on this album here and made it just a massive wave in the music scene, you know, in the grunge scene. Even though, like I've stated before, I don't really, they were kind of grouped in with the grunge thing. They sound more of just like a heavy metal band to me. They're not as garagey sounding, you know, as kind of the grunge genre is. But this is just a fantastic album. Always been one of my favorites of theirs. It has been my favorite before at times, you know, and you just say maybe in a year it won't bump back up there. That the stuff is always, you know, subject to change over time. That's the beauty of it. But I totally understand people throwing this their number one, because it's just track after track. You know, you're just getting some of the best stuff that they've ever done, and even in some of the biggest, you know, like even Angry Chair was a hit. It had a music video and everything, and Rooster. So was Them Bones, and so was Down in a Hole. Those were all hits, but like, and then of course Wood. I mean, those were all hits that got music videos and everything. But they're some of the best freaking stuff they've ever done. You know, that's one of those cases where the hits, they were for a reason here, and they, you know, to me, I don't really listen to radio, so it's not overplayed. You know, maybe I did listen to it back then, you know, like or not back then, and then not whenever the album dropped, right? Wasn't alive then, but you know, whenever I used to listen to the radio and everything, you know, you'd hear Wood a lot and Rooster, but some tracks they never get old for you, and that's with some of these tracks on here that I've heard just so many times throughout my life, like Wood and Down in a Hole and stuff like that. But really the deep cuts like Rain When I Die and Dirt and Hate to Feel and Junkhead, that's where the stuff really gets me, man. And then just sprinkle the hits on top of there, and you've just got one of the greatest and most renowned albums of the '90s. Period. This is essential '90s listening. Whether you want to throw it in the grunge category or not, or whatever, you more than likely you get like a '90s playlist or something on your Spotify or on YouTube or whatever. You're gonna see at least maybe one song, if not more, from this album, and you're probably gonna be seeing more because, again, the hits off here. But this is just a fantastically produced album. I love the feel of it. Everybody's just at the top of their freaking game. But number two for me, this was really tough picking this number one spot, man. Because they're both so different. But number two to me has got to be the Three-Legged Dog, and this one wasn't my number one. And I still, this is one of the cases where it just kind of flips back and forth for me as as time goes on. I'll constantly swap, you know, between really the top three. This one, I love how dark and gritty, and the whole, you know, Lane using that old mic gives his voice this kind of crazy effect, and layering of the vocals. The production is just insanely incredible on here. You've got, you know, Grind and Brush Away. Sludge Factory, possibly their heaviest freaking song ever. At least one of them, if not the most. You got Head Creeps, which just kind of drones on. I love that kind of vibe this one gives. You know, Shaming You is such a pretty and kind of dark, sad song. God Am is just got such a good groove to it. So Close is really heavy. Nothing Song. Frogs is one of my favorites ever. That's a very, very dark one again that just kind of builds and builds. Kind of, again, just kind of following into that more progressive side with the lengthier tracks and the, you know, the time changes. And it perfectly, you know, wraps up with Over Now. It's just a beautiful song. And I love the you know, the picking of the chords at the end, you know. Really, really pretty ending. And then, you know, even the ones I didn't just mention, like Heaven Beside You is a solid acoustic track. Primarily acoustic track that Jerry kind of gets to shine on. Again, is just freaking badassery right there. You know, this album's always Well, I mean, no, I wouldn't even say that. I wouldn't even say always, because this is one of those ones that I mentioned, like in my review. It grows on you, like each time you listen to it. First time I ever heard it, I loved it. I mean, I was a big fan, but it did rank, kind of near the bottom. But then, over the years, man, it just starts resonating with you, and you just really you really begin to hear. It's like with each listen, you hear the intricacies of it, and just the talent that went into making this thing. And again, the layering the vocals for me really, really is just such a kick-ass aspect of this album. Like in Sludge Factory, you're hearing Lane do like the high range part, and then throw in. So it's like pretty much you're hearing like two or three lanes, with through the layering the vocals, and then Jerry. So it just makes like this super kind of wicked feel to it. And it's their darkest album, I believe, by far. Just has such particularly on tracks like Frogs, that just, it's, the band were not in a good place at this time, and it reflected on the album, but it left this gem in time, So one of my favorite albums of all time, easy, and it's been my number one spot before, and it's bound to probably do it at some point in the future. Just absolutely phenomenal stuff. And I get where a lot of people, they do rank it kind of lower like me, but maybe give it some more listens. Maybe it'll pop up and rank up over time, kind of like how it has done for me. But if not, I get it. This is kind of a niche album, as far as like preference, because there aren't, like, some of these tracks like Head Creeps that I maybe wasn't the biggest fan of back when the first couple times I ever heard it. It kind of goes on and drags on. It kind of has this same kind of driving riff and everything. I like that kind of vibe with it that just kind of keeps grinding on you, no pun intended with the track grind. And I'd say Grind is one of the more, commercially accessible tracks, because Grind was one of the biggest hits off here. Same with Heaven Beside You. And again was one too, but this one definitely didn't have quite the success as the Dirt. But anyways, just freaking fantastic stuff right here. But my number one, I've had an emotional connection to this album for a long time, and that's why I had to go with my gut here and throw Jar of Flies. I know it's the acoustic side of Alice being primarily shown here, and I just think it's one of the best. Just the production on this thing is freaking phenomenal. It's just a beautiful, beautiful album, a beautiful experience. This album's like an experience, man. It's like a sad, kind of depressing kind of vibe to it, without doing it so like in your face, like maybe some of the stuff off Threelegged Dog, which that's not a problem with that album, but I'm just saying this does it more subtle in some parts. Now, right off the bat, it doesn't with, Rotten Apple's dark as hell, man. That bass groove is just one of my favorites. That's one of my favorite Alice in Chains songs of all time. And then same with the follow-up, that's also more in your face with kind of the sadness, with Nutshell. Just being one of the prettiest songs I've ever heard, and one of the first songs, I learned how to play like on acoustic guitar and everything. I Stay Away, what a beauty of a track. That was a huge hit for him. Same with No Excuses. Those ones are more like on the subtle side of kind of the sadness, because like some of the lyrics can kind of be a little like, if you really listen to them, be like, oh damn, that's kind of dark stuff, but kind of being more upbeat. Whale and Wasp is just it's only 2 minutes 35 seconds, but one of the prettiest instrumentals I've heard. And I love instrumental music. Hell, I covered Steve Vai's whole discography on here already, but I think that is just such a pretty little piece, and I love how the buzzing of the wasps kind of sound that they get on guitar and then Jerry on electric kind of does like this wail kind of sound, like wailing on his guitar. Don't Follow, I think, should have probably closed the album. Really, really kind of sad stuff that kind of picks up near the end and everything. Then Swing on This is one of my least favorite songs in their whole discography, but that doesn't take away, but it is a good song. It's got kind of a cool funky groove to it, and it kind of ends the album a little strangely, but the way, if you kind of look at it this way, is like it being like, giving you all like these kind of emotions from tracks 1 through 6, and then 7's like, hey, it's gonna be all right, swing on this, like giving you something a little more upbeat and kind of happier sounding than some of the stuff you get on here, like the more, and even then the lyrics and swing on this are pretty dark and sad too. But this album is just an experience, man. You pop it on and you're just gonna get lost in it. I mean, hell, that bass line from Rotten Apple just entrances you like it's hypnotic as all get out, man. And one of my just absolute favorite Jerry solos in that was just going crazy. I love the top box getting thrown in there. Just all the, and I think the band they were in kind of a dark time themselves, you know, getting evicted from their apartment, you know, for being on the road, and had to make this thing real quick and, you know, throw it together, and it just came out a masterpiece. One of my favorite albums of all time, EPs, whatever you want to call it. This has always been an album that I've really, really loved since I was a kid even. I mean, I remember, you know, scrolling through YouTube and seeing, like, Nutshell. And the album cover, too, has always really, like, kind of entranced me a little bit. Like, been like, what, you know, I love the colors, kind of the warm colors of it. And this album does kind of give you a warm kind of feeling, too. It's just a fantastic piece of art right here, man. I mean, it's even hard to describe, you know, kind of at times how just the feeling this album gives you, that kind of warm feeling and everything. But and like after you're done with it, it's like, man, like you gotta like take a breather, just how heavy some of the, not like heavy like in riffing, but like heavy some of the lyrical content and stuff like that, and just the emotions that it can give you and everything. But it's a piece of art. One of my favorite albums of all time, one of my favorite EPs of all time. And hey, look, we got a case where the EP was the freaking #1 spot. So, and I know this may be kind of, you know, contrary to what a lot of people be like, oh, well, the heaviest, you know, this isn't really a heavy album, you know, and how could the acoustic side of Alice make it as the top 1 spot? Well, you know, it just did for me. And I don't know, this, again, just the emotional ride this album kind of takes you on is just something, and that's kind of heavy in itself through the lyrics and through just the chords and everything played here. And I love the, you know, the string sections that kind of get, you know, thrown in there during tracks like, you know, Whale and Wasp and I Stay Away. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. But hey guys, that's it right there. Knocked out yet another discography with ranking every Alice in Chains album. And hey, we're also going to be announcing the next album, because it's only going to be a one-off thing, kind of like we did last time, which I'm trying to think, what the hell did I cover last time? Emerson, Lake and Powell is what I covered last time. This time, what we're going to look at for any Yes fans or Prog fans, it's a one and done with Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe. Going to be covering that thing right there after they, you know, ditched Yes there for a brief moment in time, did that album, and then we're done. So we're going to take a look at that album, kind of, you know, do something a little bit different, shake things up a little bit. And then don't worry, because after that, we're going to be getting real heavy with the next discography that we'll be looking at. It's going to be probably, it is going to be the heaviest discography we've looked at yet, following, again, the Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe album review. So stay tuned for that, guys. And let's talk about, I want to see them rankings down there. This stuff always fascinates me, and any kind of personal connections you guys have to these albums. That's always fun, seeing how, you know, crazily different these things can be for people, or, you know, crazily similar that they can be. And I love hearing people's thoughts, you know, throughout these on the EPs and all the different kind of sounds Alice in Chains bring to the table, because, like I said, these albums all have a totally different kind of feel to them. And I know, like most bands, that's kind of a case, but, you know, a lot of times, especially bands with huge discographies and everything, they'll have, you know, a string of albums where it kind of, they're different in their own right, do have a different feel to them, but, you know, they kind of have a string of albums where it's like, okay, they're kind of following that kind of trail, which isn't an issue or anything. But, you know, Alice, like, literally, like, each of these things just like, felt like they just did something, like, totally different on it and made something really, really unique about each of these. So, but yeah, guys, again, let's talk about these things then. I want to see them rankings and talk about them. But stay tuned. Next Monday, we're also going to be talking about and ranking every Jason Voorhees look and from the movie. So that'll be a fun one. I love doing those, ranking the appearances. That's always really fun to look at and talk about with people too, what their favorite version of some of these icons are, that, you know, these horror icons. We've done Freddy and we've ranked the Cenobites. So this should be a pretty fun one to go through. Jason's had a lot of cool different looks throughout the Friday 13th franchise. So we're going to be doing that. So stay tuned. We've got some awesome stuff coming up. And with that, like, subscribe, comment.